Welcome to Rise and Realign Conversations for the Sensitive Soul. I'm Melissa, and this space is for those of us who feel deeply, love fiercely, and sense the world in ways that are hard to explain but impossible to ignore. Here, we honor your sensitivity as a strength, not something to fix. Through reflections, realignment, and soul led stories, we remember how to move through life in a way that feels true to who we really are. This is your space to rise, to realign, and to come home again and again to your own wise, sensitive self. Well, I have to start out by saying last week's episode 27 was titled Disruptions Are Part of the Plan, Trusting Your Sensitive Nervous System. And I just can't help but laugh because, I am a Gemini, and Gemini is ruled by the planet Mercury. And so I record and publish my weekly podcast on Wednesdays. And I discovered on Monday that my podcast actually didn't publish on Wednesday at 4:44 p.m. Pacific. Um, and so, of course, that was unsettling for me because I was like, what? Like, how did this happen? And then that's my curious mind, being like, how did this happen? Like, was it me? Was it the platform? And of course I had to go down this whole, investigative experience to just accept that it must have been me. I must have somehow not scheduled it. Although that doesn't sound like it was what happened, but I just accept that that must be what occurred. And so, it's interesting because, I had to just laugh at like, okay, so on Wednesday, that's what was coming through me to share from my heart, right? About how the unexpected disruptions that pop up in our day to day life, no matter how we're scheduling things or planning things, right? They just arise. And it's how are we navigating these moments when they come up, and I've shared that in the past. I'd be like, I don't have time for this, and I would just swim in that sea of frustration. um but where I am on my journey now, I'm certainly at a much wiser place where I can just accept, like, okay, this is the universe's way of showing me, even more. So I'm grateful, and it made me laugh. What else has been making me laugh is actually, seeing what's going on, with the transits and the, planets, how Uranus is now, in Gemini and will be for like 33 years and hasn't been for 83 years. And so that interests me because, again, I'm Gemini and I didn't always understand what being born under that sign of Gemini actually meant, because it being a twin, and some people talk about it as somebody being two-faced, and there were just things about it that I didn't like, which actually again makes me giggle because that's kind of how I felt when I learned about my own human design. 13 years ago, a friend from the spiritual center I attended, said, "Oh, I just went through this training, let me share this with you." And I was like, "Okay." Um, but I didn't like what she shared, I mean, I of course didn't know what being a manifesting generator meant at that time, but she shared a lot about like emotional waves and how I had like three of them. And I was just like, nope, not digging that. But again, as we live and learn and grow, we can start to see how, oh, maybe this does kind of give me some framework to understand why I do what I do, right? And so I actually came across a Instagram clip last night. Gosh, and I forget what his channel was called, but he was like taking instructions, from God. So God was telling him, this and this about Gemini, and it was just making me laugh, but parts of it, that I did resonate with, right? Which of course I'm very curious. My mind has been fascinated with consciousness, and the human experience since I was like a senior in high school. But it was just funny, and I could see, the truth in what it was saying. And like, I am somebody who, like, I'm a deep dive kind of gal, I really found, a true understanding of myself when I discovered Dr. Elaine Aron's research on the highly sensitive person. And that was really profound for me because it just gave me a language to understand my own experiences and challenges and also gifts, and that became a real part of my passion and my career. Um, and so, although I was educating, others, hosting groups and educational, settings where I would teach about it, whether it was for pregnant women, new moms, or just again, professionals. I felt, like there was more to understand because me being a sensitive woman, I had my own health challenges. And, after being somebody who worked in locked psychiatric wards for adults and children, and just saw how medication was just so heavily prescribed when they didn't know how to understand or help these individuals when they were having uncomfortable experiences, right? And behaving in ways that others couldn't manage and couldn't understand. Um, I have come to understand so much more. And even though at one time I was also a guardian ad litem and a Rogers monitor for the juvenile court system, like I literally was going into locked psychiatric wards and interviewing the psychiatrists and, reviewing records and, needing to prepare a report to explain like what this child's experience was. But again, it was like so medication focused, right? And a lot of these kids were already in disruptive home placements. They were in foster care or, programs. And so I was found myself again having that spiritual awakening in 2008 and realizing, like, oh my God, like, I can't keep doing this. I see things so differently. Medication is not the answer, right? And I had already discovered that in my own personal journey and had gotten off medication and started to go that more holistic path and, working with a naturopathic physician for my own health challenges, but I just got to this point where I was like, okay, yes, I'm very fascinated with the mind, right? That's why I, have the professional training that I do. And that's why I work in the mental health field. But there's so much more that needed to be understood. And that's when I started to really delve into, more body based, more energy based, more, you know, soul led, trainings and experiences. And I've been running groups, I mean, from the age of 19 in locked psychiatric wards for those, again, having serious mental health issues to, leading Lumerian sisterhood circles, just again, women who remembered their pasts and, I've just done such a plethora of things. But what I really keep coming back to is how we need to understand our body, right? And as sensitive souls, right? As individuals who have this sensory intelligence, our body is so wise, right? Like we have trillions of cells with innate intelligence and individual consciousness. And, us being curious about our body more, you know, is what I find helps us to live from that more holistic understanding, that we are whole beings, and we can't separate ourselves, as far as, you know, I mean, gosh, as a mental health professional, right? When we look at, what we call anxiety and depression, like there's no test, right, that tells somebody that's what they're experiencing, that there's not a blood test, there's no genetic testing, right? But these are real life experiences that many of us have, and there are so many different reasons why we may experience anxiety or depression specifically, right? um and gosh, my own deeper dive into understanding, my physical health, right, led me into training with Dr. Leslie Korn on integrative mental health. And she really started to open my eyes to understand, um, how a lot of the other things that had already interested me, right, which again had to do with my own spiritual awakening, right, and understanding that nature, is here and is very much a part of our human journey, right? Like the sun is nourishing the plants and we eat the plants. And so that light is getting within our system, right? I mean, there's just so many angles. Gosh, I feel like I could really talk for hours and hours, but I do my best to be as concise as possible to just open up your curiosity, right, about what it means to be a highly sensitive individual, and specifically woman, because that is who I'm here to really support, and walk this path with, as a spiral guide and also as a holistic telehealth psychotherapist, because I know the value in understanding how does our body, communicate with us? How do we need to care for our body? How do we need to understand our connection to nature, right? And how technology and other things are impacting us, right? And the biggest thing is that, I am an awakened, sensitive woman, and I'm here to support other sensitive women who are also waking up. And when I say waking up, that can mean different things to different people, right? I mean, I have some amazing, women that I work with who, they're waking up to their own patterns, right? Their own conditioning from their own family members, right? They're waking up out of that. Some are um, just again waking up to like, wow, I don't trust myself. I really want to trust myself, right? And so they're walking that path to start seeing, like, okay, where am I abandoning myself and where do I need to be reconnecting, right? And so we certainly explore that. But I have some young, amazing, sensitive women who, again, so intelligent, right? And are already wanting to understand, why is my body doing this? Or, why am I drawn to these relationships, right? And this is what I mean, like being a sensitive woman, like having the ability to, to be high functioning, to have this high capacity to understand, right? And care so deeply. And again, that's because there's these core elements to how we're designed, how our neuroanatomy is just a little bit different, right? And how our nervous system is more finely tuned. Like all of this is for us to wake up sooner, wake up out of the conditioning, right? Which I love the human design system for being able to show people like a body graph chart. um, because actually I was just going over this in the realigned circle for sensitive and strong women in their 20s. We were actually looking at their human design charts. And I was talking about how, where they see the white, where it's open, where it's undefined in their charts, right? Like that's how we're all conditioned through that openness, and as highly sensitive individuals, like we feel it more deeply, right? We can see it. So waking up to understanding, like, okay, yes, we've been conditioned. That's part of how we gain our wisdom, right? But waking up to, well, what is your true nature, right? Like, what is your true essence? Like, what are you here to express? Who are you here to be? You know, what lights you up? And to like pay attention more to that. Um, that's what I feel is really powerful, is again, speaking to your intelligence, right? Like you have this sensory intelligence and you have this depth of processing that helps you understand and see things and wake up out of the old patterns, wake up out of the old conditioning, right? And realign with your voice, your truth, right? How you're designed. Because, I mean, this is what I say consistently, there is nothing wrong with you, right? And even if Ra Uru Hu talks about like the openness, right, where the white is, people may be in their not self there, or even in their defined areas, right? Like I see it more as you're still living and learning and growing, right? And so there's different, in a sense, milestones that we reach, in our maturity, where we can start to see and feel and sense things differently. So we really don't want to judge ourselves, right? And so I'm speaking obviously about astrology today. I'm speaking about the human design system specifically, right? Because that's a synergy of the Chinese I Ching, the Hindu Brahman chakra system, the Kabbalah, the tree of life, um, right? The East, did I say Eastern and Western astrology? And your unique genetic codes at the moment of your birth, right? So it's like, it's the time, the date, and the location, right? And all of that creates this body graph chart. That is one way that we can understand why we do what we do, and to let go of old language that we may have carried, right? That made us believe that there was something wrong with us, right? So, again, I'm here to keep reminding you that your sensitivity is a gift. And it's important to be creating that space for you to discover what makes you you, what makes you unique, right? Like what story you've been living, right? Where you were born, who you were raised with, right? What were the planets doing? What was the society and culture doing, right? Because I mean, somebody born on one side of the continent or the planet, right? Is going to have different, um, a different makeup, right? Different experience, different beliefs, different, a lot of differences, right? And so that's why it's so important that we not compare ourselves to others, right? And if you're like me, born and raised in America, right, and going through the public school system or any school system where it's always same age kids, right? And it's like you're just always swimming in a sea of the same people, right? The same, sure, there may be different kids, different grade levels, right? But you're all the same age. You're missing out on a lot of different things. And again, there's those barriers, those blinders that we have, right? So this seems like a good time to take a break and breathe love. So I just want to remind you, like, take that nice deep breath in through your nose. Do another inhale. And then a nice long exhale, whether you want to like blow out a candle or do a like just let it go. You don't need to carry comparison, Do another one. Nice deep inhale in through your nose. Second inhale. And again, just let it out. Just Let out whatever you've been carrying that's not yours. That could be your society, right? Your culture, your family, your conditioning, whatever you want to call it. Like, let it go because we need the space to realign, to really connect, be centered, and be still so that we can see the vastness, right? There's so many different ways to experience life. There's so many different perspectives. And what's important is to just keep being true to you because you are here on purpose with a purpose that only you can fulfill. And there's no wrong way to do it. There may be ways that feel more painful than others, but that even of itself isn't to say it's wrong, right? Like, I've really come to see that all of our paths have their ups and their downs, right? The things that we view ourselves as successful in, and other areas where we see, like, well, we're still learning and growing. And I just am here to say, like, that's part of this journey, right? Like, it's about experimenting, exploring, and coming back to your truth, your center, your unique light, right? And your body, and as a sensitive being, again, your sensory intelligence is there to keep communicating how you are doing, not in a judgmental way, but in a way that helps you recognize, like, wow, that one really upset me, whatever it may be, right? And again, I shared at the beginning how the podcast not posting last Wednesday, yeah, that felt frustrating for me, but it was just a couple of minutes, right? I was just like, okay, it is what it is. I mean, there's no going back. It's not going to publish last Wednesday, right? So now, in that moment, I said, well, I need to explore what happened. Was it me? Was it the platform? And so that was an unexpected disruption, right? But it was also an opportunity for me to recognize, like, wow, that didn't linger. I navigated through that with way more grace and ease than I would have in the past, right? And that's what's important to recognize. Wherever you are on your journey, whatever you're learning about yourself, right? Wherever you're recognizing some old patterns, or whether you're waking up because of, again, the planetary shifting that's happening. I mean, the idea, right, around how Uranus is now in Gemini and I'm a Gemini, like that sparked my interest. Like, oh, what does that mean? Because I'm not an astrologist. I certainly am not somebody who has a lot of experience in that. I really just follow my own heart, my own inner guidance, right? And I use the human design system in ways that feel most beneficial and powerful for me. And also, when we understand things like the human design system talks about our incarnation cross, right? I'm a right angle sleeping phoenix. In 2027, we then move into the cross of the sleeping phoenix, and we are completing, the cross of planning. So again, these things excite me, like, oh, does this explain why all of a sudden, like, however long I've been doing this podcast, I guess it's been 6 months now. Was that part of why all of a sudden my quiet, self decided to start speaking more publicly, right? More loudly for others to hear? I don't know. I'm just curious and I'm open. And I really enjoy speaking from my heart because I also realize that those that twin concept of the Gemini, became my understanding too, that I had been living a life where it's like, okay, I wear this hat as a therapist and I can speak about these things. But then over here, I do my BG5, business and career consultations, which is the business side of human design. I use both. I just like the language of BG5 because it speaks in a positive way. That seems more clearer for many people, but it doesn't matter to me. The whole point is if somebody is open and interested. And what I discovered is that over the last couple of years, clients started coming into sessions talking about human design. And so it was like, well, I'm not gonna, you know, pretend that I don't know anything about the human design system. Of course, I'm going to be honest. And then when clients are like, well, can we talk about that? Right? Like it became a natural thing for me to say, okay, I'm not wearing two different hats anymore. Right? Like I'm not going to do this over here and that over there. I'm going to be myself. My whole self, right? Which is kind of funny because I talk about how, becoming a holistic psychotherapist for me was about that inclusivity of mind, body, heart, and soul, right? Like we're not separating parts. Um, but yet, when you're a licensed professional, there are certain things that, you know, you want to be sure that you're providing what your client is most needing within that professional lens. And these sensitive women, again, were like interested, wanting to hear more, wanting to understand more. And so this is what I'm recognizing, as I even go on it, say Instagram or something. More and more people are talking about how, we can't be wearing two different hats. We need to be our authentic and true self, right? Like no shame or hiding is healthy, right? And so again, we need to take off the masks that say over here I'm this person and over here I'm that person, right? Like I am who I am. I mean, I'm a licensed independent clinical social worker and I have been since the 90s. And that in and of itself is very broad in the sense of I am here to be an advocate, to, you know, show kindness and caring and compassion, for those who aren't yet ready to speak for themselves, right? Which is why my master's in social work is focused on children and families, right? Um, and at this point in my journey, like I'm here to speak about the importance of being your authentic and true self. And as sensitive individuals, and especially sensitive women, like this is the time to really understand what is your body communicating to you. Because that mind body connection, your heart, your soul, right? Like it's about understanding the relationship, the connection, and how it's communicating so that you can see that again, those unexpected disruptions, they are part of your evolution. They're part of your growth. They're part of your integration. It's part of being that embodied, unique you, right? So I see this as an opportunity for you to be more true to you, but also create more space where you can be still, where you can be centered in your heart, where you can quiet that chitter chatter, slow down on all the planning that maybe you've done. Open yourself up to what else is possible. It's not only the way you've lived, it's not only the way you've seen others live, right? Like this is the invitation. Come back home to you. Come back home to what's true and correct for you in your heart, in your soul. And there's many ways to do that. I'm just sharing, the ways that I have um, explored. And of course, I love quantum biology uh, for health. And that is what I live every day, which just nature, Mother Earth. She's here supporting us, connecting in so many ways is what's essential for us. So, if you're recognizing yourself as a sensitive woman who's curious, who's waking up, right, who wants to learn more, the best way to begin with me is my Essentials course. I call it Your Sensitivity is Intelligent Design, and it's for sensitive and strong women. And it's a science informed course. It's, of course, the research around this sensory processing sensitivity trait, which is completely normal, yet invisible. And it's in approximately 20% of the population. Some are saying it's up to 30 now, but when the research was originally done, it's was about 20%. But yeah, I go into explaining the neuroanatomy, your nervous system, how to understand, the gifts and the challenges of being a highly sensitive woman. I cover the different ages and stages that we go through, our 20s, our 30s, 40s, 50s, awakening, pregnancy, motherhood, all of that. And it's independent, so you get to go through it at your own pace, whether it's, every day for about 4 weeks or once a week, which it can take you then 6 months to go through. But either way, I include 4 seasonal threshold gatherings also for you to come together with me and other sensitive women. Um, and it's called Sensitivity Realignment Spiral. And that first gathering will be at the summer solstice. Um, but you can learn more about that and join at realignwithmelissa.com. But before we close, I invite you to return to your breath, to your body, to what feels true for you right now, because there's nothing you need to fix. Just notice what's here. Where the heart leads, the body remembers and the soul awakens. As a reminder, we are here together to rise, reclaim, remember. And as always, I'm so grateful you're here. And if you'd like to walk this sensitive and strong path with me, in addition to the course I mentioned, I also write a weekly Rise and Realign lunar letter for sensitive women who are curious about the influence of the moon and what is being revealed through the different phases. You can find everything at realignwithmelissa.com. Take good care of you. Much love and light.